All right, everybody. Hello. Hello. Let me know if you can hear everything okay and if the sync is okay. And after that, then we'll wait for people to get on. And that is about it. I'll give some announcements and then we'll get going with the show. But first, I must hear from you that the sync is okay and that the sound is okay. That's most important. The sync is less important than the sound. Good, 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 good. All right, well, I've got my strat out for Mr. Thomas V, so I hope he shows up today. Anyway, I'm going to make a couple of announcements first, and then we'll get going. So first of all, thank you for all those who donated to the channel over the past week or two. Always very, very appreciated. Always very appreciated. I want to remind folks that we will be going live with the membership site in January, where we'll have lots of more in-depth things than I do on YouTube. And I use the 5T method, which is a different method. Can't really do that on the YouTube videos. For improvement, and it's going to be very interactive, more than this is with the people who are on there. Also want to say, for those who aren't on the Facebook group, I'll put a link, or maybe I already did, to the Joy of Guitar down there, and that is on Facebook. If you want to just join that group, you can ask questions. It's easier than asking them in like YouTube comments and stuff like that. So there we go. Yeah. So I wanted to say that. Thanks to everybody also who gave on the Super Chat last time. That was a lot of, it's always much appreciated. I'll just put it that way. All right. Mr. Thomas V is here. Okay, so a lot of today is for you then. All right, well, we've got 12 viewers, so we may as well begin. Today we're going to be talking about the top 10 blues rock artists of the 70s, or players of the 70s. So that's what we're going to do. I'm sorry, I forgot to give shout outs to everybody, so let me do that now. Hello, Matt. Good to hear you. Yes, I had a nice Christmas. I had a nice Hanukkah and Christmas, both. Thank you. I hope you did too. Nemo Unknown, good morning to you as well, and happy holidays. Happy holidays to everybody, so I don't repeat it all the time. Hey, Jeff. Hey, David Smith. Hey, Robbie Love. Good to see you on. Mike Marullo. Hey, good to see you. Mr. Thomas V, of course. Overdrive Guitar Channel. What's up from RI? And I take it that is Rhode Island, just one hop, skip, and jump from here. Pappy Moonshine. Hey, Gary, how's it going? Oh, you just watched a documentary on Hendrix. That's pretty cool. And George, oh man, I'm not going to try and get your last name. Papayanu. There, I tried it and embarrassed myself. Anyway, glad to have you on. And as 5224 AZ, oh, that must be for Arizona. Hi, Chandler. I'll just call you Chandler from Arizona. Good to see you. And Chris, always good to see you on The Breeze. Hello to you. All right, so let's start with the kind of the sad news. I'm sure many of you heard that Leslie West is died over the last couple days. I think he died on the 26th. So that's a big bummer to me. Real great player, definitely a blues rock. So a lot of here I've got my Les Paul Jr. out. This is actually a melody maker, but close enough for jazz, All right, obviously one of the most recognizable riffs in rock. And with its doubling on that, it was just so heavy for the time. So anyway, Leslie West will be missed. One of the things I got from Leslie West long time ago, for an early guy, he used a lot of major pentatonic compared to a lot of people of his time. And one of the things I got from him was on the one chord in a major type of blues, you can use the major pentatonic and simply use the minor pentatonic on the 4 and the 5 chord, and it sounds great. So that's something I will take away from Leslie West. So definitely, definitely it's a bummer. And maybe I heard some other really bad news this morning. Really bad for me. Really bad for me. And I've got up my Martin. I rarely get this out anymore. For those of you who kind of are in the know, I used to play exclusively bluegrass and folk. And from like 95 to 2005, I didn't play anything but bluegrass and folk. And yeah, so I heard that Tony Rice died. Now, if you don't know Tony Rice, after this show, do yourself a favor, Google Church Street Blues, Tony Rice, and just, listen to it. It's really, he was a player of the top tier in bluegrass. Everybody wanted to play with Tony, and he played with everybody. In the guitar player pantheon, he's right up there with Doc Watson and Norman Blake. Right up there. And his style was very different, and it's widely copied. He was the guy to be in the late 80s, or actually in the early 80s to right through the mid 90s. He was the guy to be in the bluegrass scene in terms of if you're a guitar player. So I don't know if you can hear this. Hopefully it's okay. But just to give you a flavor, I'm no Tony Rice. I can't do him justice at all. But one of the things that he would do is he would take a song, and by the way, I'm using a capo in his honor. So if you guys don't like a capo, first of all, you're missing out. And it's not a bright thing to really be anti-capo. It's not a crutch, it's a tool. But also, it's one way to get the sounds. So especially if you're in bluegrass or country or something like that, it's really super useful. Anyway, he might take a song like Wildwood Flower. I'm sure some of you know that one. It kind of goes like this. Might take something like that, and he would make it much more flowing. I'm going to attempt to do a Tony Rice here, but he would take it and he would make it much more flowing, and he had just incredible right hand technique. So it'd kind of go like let's try that again. And then he plays something like this. I can't do Tony Rice justice anymore. All right, anyway, there we go. So it's a really, really sad day for me on that one. TR was the best. He really was. I got to meet his brother Wyatt. I never met Tony himself. Wyatt was a heck of a person. As you will find if you play in bluegrass, that bluegrass players are very humble compared to their jazz equivalents. I never met a bluegrass player who was above everybody else. They're willing to share their time, and just among the best people. Just great time. Music was just great. All right. Well, let me see what we go. Wow, we got a lot of people on today. We got 31 people on. How about some Steely Dan? None for today, but we'll put that in. It's kind of a bummer. With the new laws passed in Congress, I'm doubting I'll ever be able to play sort of live stream other people's songs anymore. It looks like the era of that is over, which is a bummer. But we'll see. Let's see. Braid Raid. Hi to you. Mark Siebes. Hi to you. Murray Bennett. Good to have you on. Any new gear for Christmas? I'll show you some. Yeah, Mountain. It's a bummer. Yeah, Tony was just so good. Just so good. MRMKLRM. Hello. Glad the lessons help. Okay, the solos were less technical and speedy. Okay. All right. And Marianne's on. Good to see you on today. John Fargo, how about hearing about Tony Rice was sad? John Fargo says he took bluegrass in another direction with a quick position shift. He really did. You know, he took it up the neck when people weren't taking bluegrass up the neck. They were doing, the runs all on the bottom. All right. Yeah. Well, it sounds bright. I think, it's partly the recording is not so good. Pappy Moonshine, I agree. His Gordon Lightfoot album was really a work of art. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. I love Gordon Lightfoot as a singer and songwriter, but his production was always over the top, and TR just put it really simply. He couldn't sing like Gordon Lightfoot could. He didn't have the range, but he had a beautiful voice, and he just really sounded good. Okay. Blackberry Blossom. Yeah. All right. TBA's on. Hey, good to see you. All right. Let's warm up with a little bit of improv. We won't do too much, but we'll just because I thought this was Blues Rock Day, we'll play just a little of this. See if the Stratocaster can stay in tune. One of the things about Strats that sucks, you got to plug them in. That was a joke, okay? All right, let's doctor this up a little bit. All right, let's get it going. Make sure I'm in tune here. Not too bad. All right. Let's see. right, enough. All right, enough Strat talk. All right, gang. Well, tell you what. Let's go to our questions before we do any of the top 10 blues rock players of the 70s. Let me answer any questions you've got. I want to say, hey, Dunsies Guitar World, hey to you. Any Rory Gallagher planned? Ooh, that'd be fun. Maybe a little bit of a Bad Penny. Okay. Let's see. Yes, Marianne Fryer. That's I agree. It's sad for you North Carolinians. Even though Tony was originally from California, he made North Carolina his home. I think, man, some of the best bluegrass I ever heard was definitely in North Carolina. Oh, God, I saw Jerry Douglas play there once. He just brought the roof down of the place. It was so good. So good. Jerry Douglas is just an incredible dobro guy. Strats always stay in tune. Man, Mr. Thomas V, you are like die-hard Strat guy. All right. Okay, Rory was one of the best. Okay. What effects am I using? Well, I was using some reverb and some delay in the beginning, and I stepped on a little bit of extra gain at the end. All right. Okay. Let's see. Line 6 Pod. Go. Love it. Have I used Helix products? I haven't, but I think they're pretty good. Okay. What was that I said about the new YouTube rules? Yeah, well, Congress just passed a law about like streaming copyright material. They're going to be pursuing things as a felony. I don't know how that's going to work. We'll see how that all plays out, but it's definitely going to affect what I choose to do here, unfortunately, or fortunately. Whatever. It depends on how you look at it. Okay, let's see if we can do this. And I'm going to go to the front again. And so who do you think's on this list? So this is a list that I got from a Heap Big Shot. And so that's the way I want to play this first. We'll first go over his list, and we'll see. You'll cringe along with me. I want to get all your suggestions for what's on there and some guesses on what's next. So, hey, John McDonough. Hi from London. Okay, and I don't know all the new YouTube rules. Matthias, hi. What guitar would I recommend for about $1,000? Well, I recommend a guitar whose neck you love and whose, the sounds, if you like single coil sounds, then get the single coils. Otherwise, get humbuckers. But, it depends on what your tastes are. There's lots of good things. A lot of times the humbuckers have coil splits too nowadays, so you can get both sounds. But buy a guitar whose neck you love. I happen to love PRS guitars. Because of that, I grew up on Gibson, so I still love Gibsons. I'm not fond of Fender necks, but there are plenty of really good Fenders. A great Fender, and then there's some oddball things. I really like Reverend guitars. I think Reverend guitars are really good. You can get a great Reverend guitar for around $1,000. PRS, you can't buy their USA models, but you can buy some really good models for $1,000. And if Gibson doesn't really make anything. Oh wait, Gibson does make the Les Paul, what is it, Junior double cuts, and the Les Paul Juniors for under $1,000, and those are good. So, and then if you don't want to go with main brands, you can buy. There's plenty of good stuff that's out there. I love the PRS SE line. All right, I'm going too much on that. Let's get to the. Yeah, so Jeff keeps. I saw that before, Jeff McManus, saying, "Boy, 10 is just not enough." I agree, and but that's the rules. Top 10. So let's see what happens. Yeah. Supposedly, Nemo. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what it is. Okay, now here's the deal on this. I suspect that this guy was making up. First of all, it's only rock blues. So if you're pure rock or pop, you don't count. I don't know. if you're pure blues, you don't count. I don't know, but we'll see. Anything's okay on this list. Okay, so let me go to this. Let me see if I can do this live stream desktop. Here we go. Okay, so it looks like it worked. Good, I'm digging this. Okay, so we've got the top 10 70s blues rock guitarists. So HSS, Strat with HSS, that's great. Yep, that's a great suggestion. There's a great guitar that's around there. Okay. All right. Yeah, Gibson and Fender have always had sort of quality control issues. And I think it comes from being giants and not really caring too much about the rest of the market. So anyway, Gibson lately has had more than Fender. And Fender has always had good amps. And Gibson, their amp businesses have always, been a disaster for them. Okay. And I don't know why they insist on making a neck without a volute. The Fender has a bit of a volute that the necks break off. I've never had it happen to my Gibsons, but why do they do this? Just build the volute. Okay, so here we go. So Bob Gersztyn is the guy who wrote this in Blues Rock Review. So don't direct your barbs at me. Hey, no problem, Matthias. Yeah. Yeah, and before I get into that, it's really important that you like the neck. Not that it's a great neck. You can, because arguably many necks are done really well. But if you don't like it, if it doesn't work for you, Fenders, I don't like how skinny they are. The skinniness and the thinness isn't great for me. Now, I play them and I get used to them and they're fine, but it's not my number one neck. So you should pick a neck that you really, really enjoy playing. Okay, so here we go. Let's see. So I guess we're going to do number 10. So let's see. Number 10, if I recall. Oh, man. Number 10 is a real joker. Let's see if we can get this. Number 10 is a real joker. Steve Miller. Steve Miller is the pick for number 10. Now, this is in some order, but not exact order, I think. Steve Miller. So there's a picture of Steve Miller rocking out, or blues rocking out. So I have to admit, I like Steve Miller, and he's definitely a good player. If you've heard him play blues from the early days, he definitely can play. And there you go. Hey, Fenderman, good to see you on, Sean. Why did Gibson get a PRS? That's a good one, yeah. Steve Miller. All right. He did not make my list, says Jeff McManus. And Jeff had 20 on him. He's a great player. It was a surprise to see me on here. Or to see him on here. Not me, obviously. But see Steve Miller. All right, that's a good one. Number 9 is probably an obvious one, but nobody has said yet. Gee, what kind of guitar does Steve play? Yes, he mostly plays a Strat. And that's a good point, Robbie. He was more bluesy in the 60s than 70s. Okay, so here we go. Here is number 9. This is actually a really obvious one, although people haven't said. Let's see if we can guess. I want you to guess some of these. You don't have to guess 9 or whatever, but who else would be on this list? Let's see. Oh, the Breeze says Mick Taylor, Frank Marino. Okay. Bonnie Raitt. So, I think a lot of people list her because they say, oh, perfunctory, woman on the list, need one. She's really good. She deserves to be on the list, I think. I wouldn't have put her on because I'm not a huge fan of Bonnie Raitt. I love Bonnie Raitt's music when I listen to it, but I just don't listen to it enough. So this reminded me I got to listen to it more. So there we go. Yeah, she's a great player, for sure. We've got some other guesses. Stevie Ray and Clapton. George says Jimmy Page. Okay, so let's see. Number 8. Number 8. Yeah, you're right, Jeff. She's an awesome slide player. Just great feel for it, great tone. And she's a great blues singer, too. She's a great writer. So number 8 is Rory Gallagher. Number 8 is Rory Gallagher. There you go. Okay. Definitely deserving to be on the list. Uh, okay. A lot of people, one person saying wouldn't have included Bonnie Raitt. Okay. Um, let's see. Mr. Thomas V says Stephen Stills back in Frampton. Steve Howe. I don't know. Blues rock? Steve Howe. Not sure about that one. He's a great player. He's one of my, any genre, he's one of my top 10. But I don't know, blues rock. Okay. All right. So number 8, I saw Rory warm up for Rush. And I know all you Rush fans out there, Rush was one of the worst concerts I've seen in my life. And Rory was one of the best acts I've seen in my life. He was so good. It was just so good. So good. All right. The Breeze says Alvin Lee. BB King, yeah, I think of BB as blues, not blues rock. All right. Let's see. Number 7. Some people are not saying some of these. Alvin Lee. I heard somebody say Alvin Lee recently, so there you go. There's Alvin Lee on there. Ooh, can Terry Kath be on this list? Interesting. Chris says she saw Bonnie in a bar in Branson. Wow, that's pretty cool. Number 7 is Alvin Lee. Definitely some good stuff. Gary Morris says Nemo Unknown. Now, that's interesting. So I think I'll do a little sidebar here. Like I said, I'm going to anger some people. I saw Rush, and I thought they were terrible live. But I expect, when I go to see somebody live, I don't want to hear the record. So Rush played exactly like on the record. They sounded like they were on the record. They didn't vary from their songs, anything like that. Like they would have probably in the early days with Working Man and stuff like that. They sounded just like the record. And for me, I'd rather stay at home and listen to the record if it's like that. If they're willing to improvise and they're willing to put themselves out on, out there and try different things and create a show that's unique, then I'll go see them. Van Halen always did that. My favorite artists always, Robin Ford always did that. Larry Carlton always did that. Rory did that for sure. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I like to see a show that's unique. I don't like to see the record. Okay, let's see. Number 6. So if you like that stuff, they were on. They just didn't do anything different than was on the record. Okay. Number 6 is Robin Trower. Hard to argue with Robin being on this list. I probably wouldn't have put him on, but it's hard to argue with it. He's a unique artist. It's interesting. He sounds a heck of a lot like Hendrix, right? He's got that Hendrixy sound, but definitely sounds his own. Okay, somebody's saying Walter Trout. Is that right? Rory and Alex were pals. Well, that explains why he warmed up for them. I mean, Rush were huge. I admire Rush a lot. I really do. MRK, MRM, KLRM says Albert King. Brian May says David Smith. I don't think of him as a rock blues, but maybe. Okay, here we go. Number 5. Somebody said this person. Mick Taylor. Number 5 is Mick Taylor. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, he really put a bluesy... He can play the blues. There's no question about it, and he's definitely rock and roll. Mick Taylor, for me, might not have made it to the top 10 just because of the body of work. But he's definitely a great player. Still is around, still is a great player. There we go. Yes, I agree, Mike Marullo. Alvin Lee never got his due with guitar players, which is kind of interesting. Yep. Okay, number 4. Here we go. These are getting to the big guns now. Now, nobody has said this person, probably because people don't think of him as a blues player or as a blues rock player, but it really is blues rock, and that's Carlos. So Carlos is one of my favorite guitar players of all time, one of my top, and so there we go. So I don't object to him being on this list. I might have not have included him because I don't think of him so much as blues rock, but There we go. Yeah, Taylor played great sort of country blues roots rock style. Taylor was awesome that way. Carlos is a singular guitar player. Nobody else plays like Carl. Well, today people do. Orianthi can copy him pretty well, and some other people can copy him. But you know, introduced it, and he was a huge fan of BB. So like many, obviously he loved Peter Green too. But there you go. Black Magic Woman is a prime example of that. If he didn't love Peter Green, he probably wouldn't have played that. Okay, now the really big guns. I'm totally surprised nobody has said this person yet, but he definitely deserves to be on the list, in my opinion, anyway. Number 3, Johnny Winter. Johnny Winter, so hard to argue for him being on this list. I mean, that full-throated blues rock sound really came to fruition, I think, with Johnny Winter, and yeah, I mean, I think over time people came to think of him as more blues than blues rock, but yeah, is that right, Robbie? Carlos and John Lee Hooker had it. Okay, Van Morrison, interesting. I think of Van Morrison more as soul, but I like whoever played guitar on Van Morrison's stuff. I think he was pretty good. Yeah, Johnny really was incredible. So Mike Murillo, you saw Mick Taylor, I think. Are you saying you saw him in a venue, a small venue? That's pretty awesome. I never was able to see Johnny. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Let's see now. Yes, he did. Number 2. Oh, Jane says Paul. Hi, Jane. Good to see you. Paul Kossoff. Oh, that's a great suggestion. TBA says Rick Derringer. Okay, we've got 2 more to go. Anybody want to guess who these 2 might be? We've already covered Johnny Winter. We've already got Carlos, Mick Taylor. There's some good ones that have been suggested. Billy Gibbons, AZ Chandler from Arizona says Billy Gibbons. All right, Mike Murillo's messing with me. He's trying to bait me by saying if you play Dorian mode, you can't be blues. Like it's the scale that you choose that makes you blues. Oy. The Breeze says Jimmy Page. Matt says Hendrix. Mr. Thomas V says Stevie Ray. Nemo Unknown says Clapton. Yeah, we haven't seen any of those. Oh, it's Doug on his girlfriend's tablet. Hey. Hi, Doug. That's great. All right, let's see. Ooh, somebody said, Marianne Fryer says Paige Beck. Okay, well, let's see. Number 2 is Jeff Beck. Boy, is it really hard to argue with it. Now, Jeff Beck took music in lots of different directions. His Blow by Blow album and what's the album that's got Blue Wind on it? Oh, I can't remember now. I can't remember what the name of that. Wired were really out there, but oh man, Jeff Beck really knows how to play the blues, and like nobody else, he is definitely on his own. With very bluesy roots, very bluesy roots. You know what? Nobody has said Van Halen yet, but Van Halen was definitely a blues rock player. And he came in 1978 was his first album. So for me, I probably don't consider him 70s. I think of him as more 80s, but definitely he started there. All right, well, let's see who's number 1. Again, it's hard to argue with Jeff Beck being on here, right? There we go. All right, number 1. I think it should be obvious. Now, if you were on here last week, there's a special treat because last week our number 1 fictional guitarist was Nigel Tufnell playing his Les Paul with a violin. Our number 1 played it with a bow. So our number 1 on the list is Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page, the number 1 on the list. And it is really hard to argue with Jimmy Page being the number 1 blues rock guitarist of the 70s. Certainly super influential. Led Zeppelin was the mega band in the, through the mid 70s. and pretty amazing. Now there are, obviously there's so many things like Heartbreaker, Moby Dick, so many of those just great riffs. T for One. Yeah, it's hard to name. It's hard not to name some great ones. Okay, so there were obviously some great players who were left off the list, and many of you mentioned things. And many of you might be saying, well, wait, we put Steve Miller on here, but we didn't put Billy Gibbons on here. Well, and Clapton wasn't on here, and David Smith is saying, what about Blackmore? Yeah, he wasn't really, in some ways, a lot of people will say Blackmore was not a blues-based player. He was a classical-based player. He kind of brought that into rock. So classical rock and kind of merged in with later metal into metal later. Yeah, so I think the writer, you should let the writer know. So Marianne Fryer guessed it. She guessed the top two. She guessed Beck and Page. So kudos to Marianne. I was watching some of these. People said, yeah, Alex, I think you're right, that SRV is more considered 80s. His big breakthrough album was actually Bowie's Let's Dance, when people said, hey, who the hell's that guy? And there you go. All right. So who are some of the ones that I thought of when I was making this list who didn't make the cut? So here are some of the people that didn't get on. Nobody said Frampton. Frampton, one of my faves. Mick Ronson. Nobody said Mick Ronson. Actually, one person said Mick Ronson. I think it was Bertrand, but Mick Ronson, another one of my faves. He may have made my top 10. Mick Ralphs is another guy. These are just guys I was thinking of when I did this. Mick Ralphs of Bad Company fame, I believe. He wouldn't have made my top 10, but there you go. Joe Perry. Nobody mentioned Joe Perry. Definitely a bluesy rock player. If this lick isn't bluesy, let's take this off. I don't know if I can do this on a Strat. Right? That reverb is really killing me. I hated that reverb. What is it? There we go. All right. So there we go. Joe Perry and Brad Whitford, of course, his partner in crime, who actually, that lick is probably Brad Whitford who played that. All right. But there we go. Paul Kossoff. Somebody mentioned Paul Kossoff. He might have made my top 10. Paul Kossoff was such a great blues rock player. He kind of defined that transition, I think, in a major way. It's unfortunate that history has lost Paul Kossoff. Larry Carlton. Now, nobody mentioned Larry Carlton. He's a studio player, but his work with Steely Dan, if you want to call that rock, maybe it's pop. I mean, he can play the blues like nobody, and he influenced all sorts of players, from Steve Lukather in a major way to players like Tim Pierce to even players like Guthrie Govan. If you listen to Guthrie Govan, this guy who's this, and he is a virtuoso, but he's he's a modern player, and he's a technical wizard. He does all the double tapping and triple tapping and all sorts of stuff. He's an amazing player, but you listen to him, and how much did he get from Larry Carlton? An amazing amount. Jeff Baxter, I'll put him in as well. Now, people keep saying Gary Moore. David Smith keeps saying Gary Moore. I know he played a little bit. When were his big sort of breakthrough things, though? I think of him more as a 90s guy, and certainly 2000s when he really turned to blues. But early on, he was a rocker. In the 70s, I don't know. Did he played a little bit with Thin Lizzy, did he? I can't remember. Joe Walsh. I don't know if did anybody say Joe Walsh? Joe Walsh was amazing to me that he was left off the list. The main reason, because he's a great guitar player, unique. He's got his own rock stuff with the James Gang, but then he was mega popular with the Eagles, so he had a huge impact in music. And he's definitely a blues rocker in that country blues sort of setting. Kim Simmons of what's the Savoy Brown? These are just people I thought of. I don't know that they would make it, but I think Joe Walsh might have made my list. By the way, that's what the green is for. Frank Zappa, I think a lot of people would say that. I'm not a huge fan of Zappa's playing, personally. I like some of his music. I get a little tired of it, but I don't deny its genius. I'll move on. Duane Allman. Nobody mentioned Duane, I think largely because he died. But he, some of the biggest blues rock things of the 70s are really Duane Allman. I didn't mention Brian May. I thought of Brian May, but I don't think of him as a blues rock player. Same with Tom Scholz. I didn't mention Tom Scholz. Dickie, I think of him as a country blues sort of thing. And then the guys from Skinner, particularly Steve Gaines, very, very bluesy player. And for Mr. Thomas V, there's your Strat guy. Steve's a great player, really fantastic player. And then some of the other Skinner guys who I think were also good bluesy players and influential, very influential. Nobody mentioned. A few people mentioned Billy Gibbons. I actually think that that's probably the biggest omission from the list is Billy Gibbons. Billy Gibbons was he's such the quintessential blues rock player to me that man should be on there. Should have been on that list. Somebody mentioned Gilmour. How can you argue with David Gilmour? Wasn't even considered. My guess is they didn't even consider. David Smith, Still Got the Blues. That is not a 70s song, is it? Oh, I don't know. Beck was huge. Beck started in the 60s, but his heyday was in the 70s. All right, Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton wasn't on the list, but he probably made a 60s list, is my guess. He's definitely in terms of the 60s with Peter Green. Who's the Mike Bloomfield? Nobody mentioned Mike Bloomfield. Peter Green, Mike Bloomfield. His heyday, I think, in my opinion, his best playing Clapton was in the 60s, with the exception potentially of the Layla and Other Sordid Love Songs, which was also great playing. I mean, I don't argue that he's a great player, continues to be a great player to today. He's one of my top players for sure. But, yeah, I just think if you're going to have a 60s list and a 70s list, he probably goes on the 60s list. Roger Waters. Yeah, Reverend Billy. Yeah, I agree, Chase. Elvin Bishop. So nobody mentioned Elvin Bishop. Oh, Pat Travers is another one. Yeah, Elvin Bishop, great blues player. Blues rock, I don't know. Maybe. Tommy Bolin. I'll just go a little bit quick now. Keith and Ronnie. I think maybe one person mentioned thank you, Doug, on the congrats to the 50K subscribers. Thank you all for subscribing. I take it that you did. I hope you did. So anyway, Keith and Ronnie, Keith Richards and Ronnie Wood, obviously great bluesy sort of players. Generally speaking, on any top 10 list, rhythm players are left out. Rhythm players tend to be left out, and lead players are on there, are overrepresented. But Keith, in particular, I think is one of the best rhythm players ever, and could be on there. Angus Young. Now, is AC/DC blues rock? It's certainly bluesy. It's certainly blues based. But can you talk about somebody who came up with better riffs besides maybe Malcolm and maybe Keith and maybe Pete Townsend? So yeah, some great stuff there. All right, so Angus Young, he's really great. And if you listen to him play stuff like the Jack, he can definitely play blues. All right, Mike Campbell. Somebody mentioned Mike Campbell. I think of him more as an 80s guy, but I probably shouldn't have put him on. If I put Mike Campbell on, I should probably put Gary Moore on. Still Got the Blues, though, I think is a 90s thing. Neil Schon. Nobody mentioned Neil Schon. Though Neil Schon did a lot of pop, it's extremely bluesy, his style that he plays, and one of the best blues players around in the 70s. He was, and then in the 80s as well. Maybe that's it. Maybe he's more of an 80s guy. Stephen Stills. Somebody mentioned Stephen Stills. I saw Steven Stills. I saw CSNY minus Y. I saw Crosby, Stills, and Nash minus Neil Young. I don't know when that was. I want to say 1988, 87. And Steven Stills got on, and they just let him go for like 15 minutes. He was just playing the guitar as a warm up to some song, and extremely bluesy. It was acoustic. He played all acoustic. He was unbelievable. It was one of the best guitar things I've ever seen in my life. And I've only been disappointed by his albums ever since, because I keep waiting to hear that long jam that he did on acoustic. Yeah. So I mentioned Joe Perry earlier. Yeah, 70s Scotty Moore for sure. But not 70s, but yeah. So Arizona says Montrose. I don't think of him as blues rock, and I'm not a huge fan of Montrose, but he was a great player. And Doug says Terry Kath. Yeah, Terry Kath was a great player. I forgot about Terry Kath. I would have put him on for sure. Jim Croce. I don't know, Chris. I don't know about that. Okay, so there's Uncle Ted on the list. I thought of Uncle Ted. I probably wouldn't put him on a top 10 for me, but he's definitely blues rock. He's more Chuck Berry based, I think. And so is Keith for his leads. But Terry Kath was amazing. Michael Schenker. Now, nobody mentions him because they think of him as an 80s guy. But UFO, Anyway, great player. John Fogerty. Nobody mentioned John Fogerty, but think about it. What are some of the classic riffs of blues rock? Born on the Bayou. Yeah. Up Around the Bend. It doesn't matter that they're easy. What matters is the ideas that people came up with. And I guarantee Fogerty can play, right? Run Through the Jungle. If that's not blues rock, I don't know what is. So I didn't put Pete Townsend on it because I think of him. I love Pete Townsend. I don't know why I don't think of him as a blues player. Although he's definitely a bluesy guy. He should be on. I should have listed him. Yeah, and the Outlaws. The guys from the Outlaws. Thank you, Chase. That's glad you mentioned that. The guys from the Outlaws. And what about Leslie West? No love for Leslie West? Maybe he's more of a 60s guy. I don't know. But Leslie had the best tone in all of that. Yeah, it's blues-based rock. If you look up UFO in the early days, they were blues rock. Yeah. As much as Rainbow was. So maybe if I put Schenker on, I've got to put Blackmore on then. How about that, David? Can we agree for that? If I'm gonna put Blackmore on, I'll put Schenker on. Okay, but anyway, let me get back to Leslie. Obviously, Leslie, one of the best guitar tones of all time, and so much was here, right? Was right here. No, personally, I think he kind of lost that tone later, but early on, that tone with Mountain, nobody had it. All right, the only people I can think of when I think of tone are like Carlos, and that are on par are Carlos and Tom Scholz, Hendrix, of course. Hendrix had that tone, and then Van Halen later. All right, they all had their own unique stuff. All right, Judas Priest guys. I don't know, really? 80s? 70s? 70s blues rock. 70s blues rock, Arizona. Robert Cray. I love Robert Cray's playing. He's one of my favorite blues artists, and I think of him as blues and R&B, but I think of him as more 80s was kind of his when he hit it big with like Smoking Gun and that. All right. Well, anyway, so that's the end of my list, and I think, and I don't claim, it's really hard if you think about it. Look at all the lists that I have. There's 10 on each one of these pages, so I listed 30, and I didn't even mention people like that doesn't include the original 10 that were listed of like Rory Gallagher and so forth. But again, if we go back to the beginning, let me just go back to the beginning. If I go back to the beginning, here's the man. If you want to look him up and give him an earful, you can go ahead and do it. Bob Gersztyn, I'm sure he'd love to hear with you. There you go. Oh, Randy Bachman. Thank you, iGoob. Yeah, Randy Bachman should be on here. But let's just go through his top 10 again. Remember, it was Steve Miller, Bonnie Raitt. I think Bonnie's a good choice. Personally, I think Bonnie's a good choice. Rory Gallagher, I think Rory's a great choice. Alvin Lee, Robin Trower, Mick Taylor, and then some of the heavyweights for sure. Carlos, Johnny Winter, with those mini humbuckers on that reverse Firebird, and then of course Beck and Jimmy Page. All right, there we go. Hey, thank you, Gary. Appreciate the. I really appreciate the super chat. It always helps to put on these shows. So helps keep me kind of fired up to work. I only work for tips. If I only did that, I'd be in bad trouble. All right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate it. And I think I'll stay on and answer any of your questions for you. I want to thank again. Yeah, Buck Dharma mentioned. Somebody mentioned Buck Dharma. David Smith. I agree. Yeah, he was a great player of the 70s. Blues rock. Yeah, I think so. I think it qualifies. So anyway, Gary, I want to thank you again for the super chat. That's really nice of you, and really, really appreciate it. Okay, Doug, we'll see you. Hey, iGoob, thank you for subscribing. Appreciate it. Hey, if you haven't yet, before you go, thank you, Daniel. Hey, I love the dancing pear too. Is that in a pear tree? There's no missing partridge. Thank you for the super chat, Daniel. Thanks for coming on too. Appreciate it, brother. Okay, so if you haven't yet, please like the video. Yeah, if you like the show and you want to see them continue, please at least like the video, comment on them, and all that. I'll stay around and answer some questions, but I'm going to go and get my coffee. I'll be right back. I promise I will be right back answering your questions. Hit you up, shout. Okay, Doug. Sure thing on the Pat Benatar. I'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, okay? All right, so I'm back with my coffee, going full octane here. All right, so what questions do you have? If there are none, I'll just take us out with a little improv, and I will get... EVH once said, I don't have the blues, so I don't play the blues. Tell that to Ice Cream Man. Great frickin' blues rock song, right? Ice Cream Man and Full Bug and all that kind of stuff. Definitely a blues-based rock. A lot of people, by the way, accuse Randy Rhoads of being a Van Halen clone. But Randy got his inspiration from classical music. I mean, Randy could play blues, rock bluesy sort of things too, but his music was really classically based, whereas Hendrix Van Halen was really, even though he talks about the piano stuff, a little overexposed here. There we go. He talks about the piano stuff and all that being influential. I'm sure it was, but yeah, he's definitely a blues player. All right. What's Pat Benatar's husband's name? Oh, geez. Neil Giraldo. Neil Giraldo. Great player. And great producer. Seems to be a really nice guy, too. Thank you, The Breeze. Thank you. And, oh, I appreciate it. Coffee's on you. Thank you. Appreciate it. So I'll take a draft. All right. Thank you, Breeze, and Daniel and Gary for the super chat. Ice Cream Man is a cover. Yeah, it's a cover. They played, Van Halen played lots and lots of covers for sure. It's a rock blues cover. Right. Doesn't matter if they write the blues. I mean, of course they wrote blues based music. If you listen to, a lot of their stuff, it's based in the blues for sure. I mean, they did other things too. Van Halen were innovative. So they went beyond the blues. I mean, to me it's classic rock blues, but most people think of, when they think of rock blues, they think of like the really like the Clapton, the stuff that's really you can't, it's not so far from the blues. Skinner, in my opinion, Leonard Skinner did a lot to move it that way, because Leonard Skinner kept that bluesy edge throughout, although they moved to totally different chord changes, like so many did. Same with Frampton. Frampton kept a bluesy edge to his play all along the way. Okay. Name some other blues covers from Van Halen. Oh, I don't know. Blues rock, maybe. What would be another blues cover from Van Halen? I don't know. Ice Cream Man's, it's pretty much straight blues. They rocked it up. But Full Bug, I think that's one of their own. Where Have All the Good Times Gone? Really Got Me. Those are pretty bluesy, pretty blues based. Is my paper shredder solid? And people were talking about that. They think it's really an amp. It's not. It's really a paper shredder. Okay, see? Oh, jeez. Now I've got cleanup to do. Thanks. It's really a shredder. Oh, now I got to clean that damn thing up. All right. Oh. I don't know. Somebody Get Me a Doctor sounds very bluesy. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that sounds very bluesy to me. Jump is jump blues. I don't know. Go ahead and jump. All right, Marianne Fryer. What do you folks think of Marcus King? And I want to get to MRM's comment on Tommy Emmanuel too. But let me talk about Marcus King first. I love Marcus King's playing. I don't know enough of it. I have his first album. I think it's his first album. I love the songs Rita Is Gone and Jealous Guy. It's kind of like got that R&B type blues, upbeat feel to it. Jealous Man, I think it is. He reminds me a lot of Sean Costello. Marianne, if you don't know who Sean Costello is, look him up. He died in 2008. Very promising guy, young kid. He played a lot with Susan Tedeschi, and then he played a lot with who's the guy from the band, the drummer. Who's the drummer from the band? Somebody help me out. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank here. Played in Woodstock. He had this jam all the time in Woodstock. Levon Helm. So he played with Levon Helm a lot, and he sounds a lot like Sean Costello, who was a beautiful player. Sean was a beautiful player. But Marcus King's great. I hope I'm not in trouble, Mark. Okay, I hope I'm not too. Let's see. Tommy Emmanuel seems in the league of his own as far as degree of difficulty. Probably not. I mean, probably the guys who are really in the league of their own are the great classical players. A generation ago, it was the John Williams and Julian Bream. Those guys are probably in a class by their own. Martin Taylor is another guy who's in a class by his own, probably technically. But Tommy is incredible, unbelievable. And for what he does, yeah, he's amazing. I saw him fairly recently, maybe 2 years ago. He played with David Grisman. So it was Dog and Tommy Emmanuel were playing. So if you guys don't know, Grisman is a mandolin player, and so they did their thing. It was very worked out. The warm up for that act was Tommy Emmanuel playing solo, and he was unbelievable what he could do rhythmically and playing guitar at the same time. There's nobody else who does that. The only person I can think of that comes close to doing that, and who's also in a league of his own, is Phil Keggy. Phil does all these weird rhythm stuffs and amazing with a looper, and Tommy is the same. He's just incredible. The thing about Tommy is if he ever has an off night, it would be a terrible show because he's playing everything like at its limit. He's kind of like Louis Armstrong was. You know, Louis Armstrong often got criticized for that. I see Seeps. Yeah, I'm trying to hide the evidence. Louis Armstrong got criticized a lot for always playing at the edge of his ability. And so if he had an off night, he sounded bad to people. I don't know if I admire that. I think I do. I think I admire that. I'd rather have in the pantheon. I put both Peter Frampton and Jeff Beck in there. I hold Beck a little bit higher because of exactly that. Beck takes chances all the time. You listen to him hit wrong. He hits wrong notes. And not that I admire people who always hit wrong notes, although I do that a lot. But I like people who are on the edge and they're trying at the edge of their abilities. Frampton, I thought, as great as he was, I think he always toned it down a little bit. And there's a philosophy there, right? I'm not saying one is worse than the other. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I goob. Van Halen's first album's the most bluesy of them all. And it's the hardest edge, too, for sure. Jesse James Nichols. No, I haven't heard of him, Gary. Dr. Hook. Let me catch up a little bit. Phil Keggy is brilliant in Untitled. He truly is brilliant. I saw Phil several times in the 80s, and he was just shockingly good and tasteful. Like he can... That's another thing I admire about these guys. Phil can play anything, but he chooses to play things that sound right for the song. And you know, one of the things I think I talked this up last time was one of my greatest disappointments of the last 10 years was seeing Neil Schon. I've always been a huge Neil Schon fan. Love his play. But I saw Journey on tour with Def Leppard. And this is recently, okay, I was one of the oldest people in there. I went with this woman who was from my class. I was teaching a class, and she said, "Oh, do you want to go to this show?" I was like, "Yeah." I showed up to pick her up to go to the hotel, and she had done her hair up like this rock chick from the 80s. It was hilarious. Anyway, Lynn, if you're out there looking, it was a fun time that we had at the stadium that night. That was great. But anyway, so we went there, and Def Leppard I liked. I never liked Def Leppard when I was younger because I just wasn't into the big hair bands. But then Journey came on. I was so psyched to hear Neil Schon, and Neil was terrible. And what I mean by terrible is every song he was showing off only. He would just play. It was garbage. And you know that he doesn't have to play that way. He can play slow and melodic and occasionally pull that out. Think of some of the greatest rock solos that are in pop. Neil Schon did them. But to me, I always hate to hear when a guitarist is clearly just showing off how fast they can play. It really bugs me. It may not bug you. It bugs me bugs the heck out of me. And it bugs me when I do it. I don't like pulling out. I can't play like Neil Schon. I can't play to that speed. But, it's just not what I'm into. But I love the melodic side of Neil Schon's playing and the chordal sort of work that he does. It's Hendrixy. I love that. And anyway, Phil Keggy can do all that. He can play as fast as anyone. He can play as technically as anyone that I know of. Maybe not some of the great classical players, but he doesn't. And he resists that temptation. He plays, and maybe when he's doing like a guitar solo only, he'll show off a little bit. But when it's a song, he keeps to the song and plays something that just fits. I just love that. George, to me, the epitome of a great player is George Harrison. Guy plays exactly what's right for the song and nothing else every time. Anyway. Okay. Yeah, I agree, iGoob, is that Page did that. He played on the edge of his abilities a lot. Yep. Rick Nielsen. Oh, yeah, the Cheap Trick guy. I forgot all about him. Yeah, the guy who wore the hats, right? And had all... He was known for having zillions of guitars back in the day. I wonder if that... Now everybody has zillions of guitars, but he did. David Smith says Steve Morse. Talk about a technical guy, right? He kind of brought in that whole era of clean and fast at a different level than Van Halen did, right? I mean, there was the fast stuff. Van Halen did fast, but Alan Holdsworth did fast as well. So there was that. And then there was the Vai and Satriani. But Steve Morse was a different branch of that. Steve Morse was a different branch of that. Yeah. Anyway, I adored Steve Morse when I was younger. Okay, anyway, you can see I get on my soapbox when I'm talking about the that stuff. Yep. Roy Buchanan, yeah. Now, I didn't put Roy Buchanan on the list because I think of him as more blues, but maybe you're right. Maybe he was blues rock. Yep. Roy Buchanan, beautiful player. Beautiful player. Phil, Rory was on the list. He was on the top 10 list. He made number 8. Street Bright, Elliot Easton has not been mentioned. Oh, he was. That's to Phil. Yep, no problem, no problem. All right. Okay. Any other questions that y'all have? Y'all. David Lindley. So Rudiger Brinkman. Rudiger, by the way, welcome. Glad to see you on. He is a beautiful player. David Lindley, the player with Jackson Browne, most well known for Jackson Browne and his lap steel work. He was a beautiful player. Just lyrical, how he played the notes that he played. And this is another thing. I think I can't remember who it was. It might have been Mike Murillo who's getting my goat with saying he can't be blue. Carlos can't be blues because he played Dorian. I know you were kidding. But David Lindley is a great example of somebody who, it's not the notes that he's playing, although he's playing great notes. It's how he's playing those notes. It's how he's getting to them. It's how he's lingering on them. It's how he's moving on from them. It's how he's getting into those. And it's how they fit into the song. That's just, very few people can play that well. And it has this feeling of holding back, always. And it makes the songs really ache. You can hear, I'm tearing up as I think of a David Lindley solo. Isn't that crazy? Music does that to me. So, I did give a shout out to Matt D. Anyway, music will do that to you, but only when masters really play. I think David Lindley's one of the masters. And stuff like that doesn't get on top 10 lists. Play like that doesn't get you on any top 10 list, but I guarantee it's harder to play like David Lindley than it is just about anybody. Even though the notes are there, it's really hard to emote that way with just strings, wood, and a little thing coming out of the amp. Yeah. All right. Okay, well, let's see. We still have 38 people on. So let's, if there are no other questions, looks like we don't have any. El Rayo was Lindley's band. Okay, I'll have to listen to it. I didn't know that. I'm most familiar with his work with Jackson Browne. Robbie Krieger, I don't think was mentioned. I think of him as more of a 60s thing, but yeah, the Doors were around the beginning of the 70s. I don't know. Did Robbie do much after the Doors? I like, so people are talking a little bit about Elliot Easton. I like Elliot Easton a lot. I don't quite put him up with a lot of these other players, but he was very, I like his play. Tasty, tasty. I think of the Cars as a pop band, though, or new wave rather than blues. But, I mean, he definitely could play bluesy type of things. No question. Yeah, David. So, David, while I'm at it, what is the, I know Gary Moore sold, what's his name? Peter Green's Les Paul. He ended up selling it. But what's the one that he did at the Montrose Jazz Festival or Montreux Jazz Festival? I'm going to look it up and I'll put it in the chat. This is just an unbelievable thing. Let me see if I can get there. But he played a Peter Green song at Montreux Jazz Festival and he used a 335. It's one of the best blues with a 330. He should have played the 335 more. He makes that thing just absolutely sing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a classic Peter Green song. I forgot about it last week and I wanted to make sure I got it. So let's see if I can do this. Gary Moore. Montreux. And we'll see. 335. See if I can find. There it is. Need Your Love So Bad. Why could I not think of that? See, it's an obvious one, but the video is just so good. I'm gonna put it in the link, just so that you guys can click on it and watch it after the show. Okay, but that's it. This is Gary Moore playing with a 335, and he's at the edge of feedback the whole time. He builds the solo. He's not just blowing away, like showing how fast he can play, which he can play very fast. In his hands, like several other people, like Larry Carlton, who's one of my faves, the 335, and B.B. King, and Freddie King too. The 335 is just an instrument. It's a harp made in heaven. And they're all there now. Oh, except for Larry. Larry's not there yet. Okay. Anyway. All right. Need Your Love So Bad. Thank you, David. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Now, somebody, I think it was Ravensmead, who's not here today, asked me what were some of my favorite blues intros. And I'll ask that question. And then after we're done with that, what are some of your favorites? So I don't know why I didn't think of these things when I was putting on the spot, but Need Your Love So Bad was the one I got stuck in my head. Like, I got to remember this. But Ain't Nobody's Business that Freddie King does, unbelievable. I like the Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out that Clapton does. There's another one by Peter Green that I love. I love those slow blues ones. And of course, Stevie Ray's Leave My Little Girl Alone version of Leave My Little Girl Alone or Texas Flood are two of the all-time classics. But there are plenty of other ones too. There are plenty of other great ones too. All right. Well, if you don't have any great blues intros, leave your comments after the video in there on would be some of your top 10. And I'm going to... Otis Hertz, Statesboro Blues, yeah. So I'm going to take us out with a little bit of... hey, Bubba. Yeah, Brian Setzer. He was a great player. I'm going to take us out with a little bit of blues. We'll use, in honor of Leslie West, we'll use this. We'll use this little Les Paul, or this Melody Maker. And we'll see if we can play this. Let me make sure we're in tune. Sounds a little out, but that's okay. A little sharp. Something sounds wrong here. Here we go. Close enough for jazz. Let's take it out with a little blues, or I might use Dorian on this though, Mike. So I don't know if you can call it blues if I'm using Dorian. All right, we'll take it out with a little blues. Blues rock, country blues. How about that? We'll see you. We'll see you next week. And until then, take it easy. Once again, thank you, Gary and Daniel. And I forget. I'm so bad about this, but thank you. Now I feel terrible. I'm gonna find it. Thank you, The Breeze, for the super chats. Always appreciate it. Always appreciate the donations. Don't forget to like this. And don't forget to join the channel if you haven't. Join Joy of Guitar. All right, I've got enough in. So we'll see you next time, okay? Have a great Sunday. Thanks again for everybody for showing up. Appreciate your showing up. And good time. Good times. Happy New Year to everybody. Just soak it in here for a bit. All right. We'll see you next week, everybody. All right. We'll see everybody. Thanks for showing up again. Appreciate it. Thanks, Siebes. We're just playing around. I didn't even know the chords to this one. I was just playing around using my ear. Okay. See you next week.